Today's video is sponsored by LG and Nvidia. When Shadow Warrior 2 launched in 2016, it brought with it some fresh new ideas and improvements from the original. They updated the gameplay to a style and pacing more akin to Doom 2016, added more level variety through the mixing and matching of set pieces, combining them in different ways to keep things fresh in subsequent playthroughs. There was a brand new loot system, giving players over 70 different weapons along with mods to hunt for. They also added co-op, letting you play the game in groups of up to 4, and just in general, it was thought to be a nice marked improvement over the original. So when I went into playing Shadow Warrior 3, I hoped that they would be taking similar steps forward to evolve the formula as they did from 1 to 2. While the game does still have a great foundation with this fluid, fast-paced, hectic arena shooter action that most of the time both runs and feels great, it also seems to be a big regression from Shadow Warrior 2, with the removal of co-op, replacing the loot system with a fairly basic upgrade tree, a completely linear story campaign with smaller levels and straighter levels. There's no more variety there are no more side quests, and there appears to be very little real replayability. There's no chapter select to replay old missions, and a significantly shorter game length, which I clocked in at around 5 hours. While I really do enjoy the moment-to-moment combat, the crazy over-the-top weapons and enemies, the movement system, the locations, and the set pieces, I also feel like Shadow Warrior 3 falls short in every other aspect, which is a huge disappointment, as I was looking forward to spending more time with this game because I had fun playing, but as of now, after my 5-hour playthrough, there's really not much else to do. So here in today's video, I want to jump in and go through the nitty-gritty of Shadow Warrior 3. I want to talk with you about all the various features and aspects of the game and touch on the things that I really do enjoy, because don't get me wrong, there's a lot that I really like about this game. The most important thing, which is the gameplay, is really awesome. Like, it's a fun game and it's a good arena shooter, but I do feel like it misses the mark on so many other important things, and it's not just the overall length of a 5-hour campaign and not much replayability, although that is certainly something. There's so many other things that make the whole experience really feel like a step backwards from what happened with that evolution from Shadow Warrior 1 to 2. So we're going to dive into all of that here in today's video. Before we do though, we got a quick word from the sponsor of today's video. As mentioned at the start, this video is being sponsored by LG and Nvidia for the LG Ultra Gear 34GP 950G. This is a 34-inch curved ultra-wide monitor with tons of specs and features geared towards improving gaming and work. I've been using it myself for the past few months now and feel like it's really helped in both areas. For work, all that extra screen space has been really nice, letting me fit multiple applications, browsers, and any note-taking tools on a single monitor. The extra space has also been real nice for gaming as well, and then on top of that, they've got some neat performance features like broader luminescence, minimal input lag, and an FPS counter to track your frames, and quite a bit more. Stay tuned for later in the video as I'll be going into this stuff in quite a bit more detail. Okay, so I want to start off this review of Shadow Warrior 3 by talking about the good, and the gameplay, hands down, is the best part of this game. It is really good. If you have any liking for the modern day arena shooter a la Doom 2016, you will probably enjoy playing this game. You're moving fast, dodging attacks, slicing and blowing up enemies, weapon swapping instead of reloading, performing these over-the-top finishers where you destroy these, like, you just obliterate their souls, all while being able to wall run, double jump, and grapple hook your way around these tight, intense combat arenas, and it's just really fun. When there are enemies on your screen, it is literal non-stop action. There's not a single moment of downtime in combat, and it all requires quick thinking and reaction time as you try to stay alive while countering the numerous enemy types all around you. Now, the arsenal that you bring with you into combat consists of 7 weapons. You've got a revolver, a shotgun, a SMG, grenade launcher, high-powered rifle, shuriken launcher, and then your trusty katana for when you want to get up close and personal. Each weapon type shines in its own way, providing options for any situation that the game throws at you. Pistols will be great for landing precise shots on enemy weak points, SMGs for clearing hordes of the basic enemies, the shotgun is great for high health targets. Just in general, the game is designed in a way where you will be constantly cycling through each weapon type depending depending on what's in front of you and how much ammo you have left. Also, weapon swapping reloads all of your other guns, which creates this really nice tempo of shooting and swapping instead of just sitting there waiting for your guns to reload. And then beyond your weapons, you have access to this Chi Blast ability. This will knock enemies back. You can use it to throw them off cliffs or into spike traps, or even just to stagger them, which will expose their weak spots, letting you take them out more quickly. And there is a host of different enemy types, and it does seem like your different weapons are supposed to correspond with those. Some weapons, like for example, the really basic enemies, I found the pistol great at. And then there are these like lumbering brutes, which I thought the shotgun and SMGs were really good for. And as you work up the tiers and get access and unlock your new weapons, which come progressively as you move through the campaign, you are also at the same time introduced to new enemy types that, as it so happens, those weapons will be good for. It's not a direct like rock, paper, scissors, 1-for-1 situation, but certainly in general, there are some weapon types that are better for taking out certain types of enemies. And then beyond using your weapons and knocking enemies back in your Chi Blast, you also have access to this finisher. This will let you instantly take out a single enemy, but at the same time, it will provide you with a nice little bonus. So depending on the type of enemy that you use it on, you're going to get some specific useful benefit. You could get a buff to your health, you could get access to a freezing grenade, or a short-term use of these special weapons that are like themed after the enemies. Every single enemy type in the game has a corresponding item that they will give you if you use your finisher on them. You have a finisher meter that's broken up into 3 tiers. This will be charged in combat by picking up these little droppable items or things you'll find in the environment, and then the tougher enemies will require more charges to use your finisher on. As I played the game, I found that there were certain enemies that gave bonuses that I really enjoyed and I kept coming back to. For example, there were these warriors that would give me access to their sword, which when attacking would instantly teleport me to any nearby enemy and then one-shot them. I found that really useful, and it turned out that I was using my finisher on these sword enemies pretty much all the time because of that. And outside of the gunplay and your knockback and the finishers, I think that movement in this game is also really fantastic. So you have access to a double jump, you have an infinite dash, you can just keep spamming this, there's no meter for it at all. There's also a crouch slide, a grapple hook, and you have the ability to climb or wall run anywhere this green ivy is found in the environment. And this adds a nice dimension to the action with how fluid and versatile you can be with your movement. I never really felt like I was trapped while playing. There was almost always an option for me to reposition if I was in a bad spot, if I was overwhelmed or surrounded by enemies in a corner. There would be some option for me to escape and give myself just enough breathing room to start blasting away again from a safer distance. All of these elements combine into what is just a very satisfying, fun to play arena shooter. The gameplay loop, the actual shooting in this game, a very important part. The moment-to-moment combat, it is non-stop action and it feels great. And like I said at the top, this is the strong point for Shadow Warrior 3, and it is very strong and it is very important. If you ask me, the gameplay is one of the crucial things to any game, but gameplay is not all that's in this game. Let's move on to talk about level design and the setting. In terms of how the game is flowing and how it's designed, it's basically broken up into 3 components. There is the storytelling, the combat arenas, and then there are pathways that connect them. So make no mistake, this is 100% a linear game. Beyond the occasional side path containing collectible skill points, you are moving down a single narrow pathway. So when you start a level, you'll get a bit of a narrative in a cutscene, and then you'll load in and will have a path to walk along until you enter your first combat arena. Enemies will then spawn in, your exits will be closed off, and you have to kill everyone there with, there's no like time limit or anything, but just enemies keep spawning until they're done spawning. You kill the last enemy, a gong sound then appears, and this will then unlock the next path area, which will lead you down some narrow pathway into the next arena. Now, in between these areas, you might get some dialogue with your main character talking to supporting characters, but again, it's simple. Walk down a straight path, fight in an arena, walk down the next path, fight in the next arena, rinse and repeat until you've reached the end of a level, at which point you'll probably get some narrative-related cutscene. That is exactly how this game plays out every time in every subsequent playthrough. Now, there is some variety in the size, but for the most part, all of the combat arenas themselves, I would call them relatively small. They'll be made up of various structures and terrain types, obstacles for you to navigate around with different elevations, but the overall formula is more or less the same. You'll have those hordes of enemies that are summoned in, and you'll use the weapons that you have and the tools in your environment to take them out. Every arena will have a few useful things, from collectibles like health, ammo, and then some charge for your finisher move. There will also be explosive barrels that deal a variety of elemental damage, and sometimes there will be traps like wall spikes that you can knock enemies into, or other deadly contraptions to take them out. And you just basically have all of this plus your maneuverability options like small openings to crouch slide through, rings that you can grapple hook and swing from, letting you get to higher elevation or just away if enemies are all around you, and there will be vines for you to climb or wall run on. And the entire thing basically becomes a big dance with you zipping around as you try to avoid damage, then using the weapons and ammo you have along with those environmental traps and hazards to tear through and take out every last enemy until the stage is clear, then unlocking the path to the next stage for you to head to. But I don't want to be reductive from the world. I know like the structure and the formula is pretty simple and straightforward, but I will say, like, in the process of moving between these combat arenas, you can soak in these really cool environments. I really liked where this game was set. Like, I found myself on numerous occasions just pausing to take in the game's world and its various set pieces. From climbing the side of this massive craggy mountain, trying to reach the top, to swinging from these oversized trees through this mystical forest, and even fighting on the back of an ancient flying dragon. Not a spoiler, by the way, this is literally in the game's tutorial. Overall, I just thought the world and environment looked great. This was a pleasant space to spend some time playing in. I think the visuals of this game are sharp and crisp. I like the design aesthetic, and yeah, I really enjoyed the environment. Now let's move on to talking a bit about the upgrade system. While the game no longer has the loot collection aspect that was present in Shadow Warrior 2, it does have a new upgrade tree system. So as you play, you'll be collecting these upgrade points. These are these white and purple pearls that you find in the environment, and you will spend those to improve your weapons and your character. Every one of your weapons will have 3 available upgrades for you to unlock. The first tier will increase your ammo capacity, with the second and third tiers adding stronger modifiers. For example, the shotgun can be upgraded to fire fully auto, and then can be upgraded again to disable reloading, letting you shoot until you completely run out of ammo. Meanwhile, the grenade launcher gets an increased explosion radius and then upgraded again to allow it to track enemies, and there will be similarly strong modifiers for every other weapon in the game, including upgrades for your sword that add this really cool elemental damage to it. Besides your weapons, there are also character upgrades providing you strong enhancements for your Chi Blast skill, improving your survivability with your health, also improving your resources and how explosives in the environment affect enemies. And again, these upgrade points are just collected in the environment, which also, I should mention, plays into the very limited diverging from the main path in this game. As I mentioned, you're pretty much walking down one straight path. There is no real exploration in this game, but there will occasionally be like this side area slightly branching off of your route, at which point you'll find after a short distance like 1 or 2 upgrade points that you can collect. In addition to that, there are also challenges in the game for you to complete, like getting headshots or killing multiple enemies at once with a single attack, and completing these challenges will unlock even more upgrade points. So when I finished my first playthrough, I had unlocked just about every skill. I was still missing a few though, so it does seem there were probably some more discoverable points that I hadn't collected somewhere in the environment, as the remaining challenges that I have weren't enough points to completely fill all of my skill trees. But yeah, there aren't any other collectibles in this game or anything. It's only the skill point things, and those skill points make your stuff stronger. Now on to the story and characters. I gotta say, overall, I found the story somewhat forgettable. Not gonna spoil it for you here. It's just a narrative. It's like a redemption arc for our main character. He's trying to make right some wrongs of the past. I should note though, for the most part, this isn't the biggest draw for me in games in general. In other words, a story has to be just like really good for me to care at all about it. If a story is just average or worse, if it's like a story that I've pretty much heard before in the past, but just in a different setting, I find myself just completely disengaged, and that was pretty much the case here. I just didn't really care. The combat, the gameplay, the environment, the exploration are what I tend to care more about. In addition to that, though, I do like having individual characters with good personalities and good banter. I find that interesting, way more so than whatever the overarching story and the main bad guy is. That I care less about. So that said, I actually found myself really liking the main character here. Even though he is a bit crass at times, I did come into this game knowing that that is just what this series is sort of all about. It's always been this way. But in spite of his tendency to be a little off-putting, I found him really endearing. I actually really did like this. I was rooting for this guy. It's kind of a shame that I only had 5 hours to spend with him. Not quite enough time. I would have liked to hear more of his character evolving. But yeah, I just in general found the overall story largely forgettable. As to the game's performance, it ran mostly well while moving through the levels and engaged in combat. I was getting a smooth 144 frames on the highest graphical setting at 1440p. However, there were fairly consistent frame drops when the game was loading in a cutscene. I would say the first 3 to 5 seconds of almost every cutscene would be super choppy as it transitioned from gameplay to cutscene before eventually smoothing out. It was a little jarring, but overall didn't really bother me too much as it didn't affect my actual play experience. I will say too, I had at least one major bug that I noticed during this boss fight. There was this transition phase about halfway through where the boss was supposed to appear on a platform and he completely vanished, like totally disappeared. I was wandering around the arena for about 10 minutes confused and trying to figure out if I'd missed something, if there was something I had to trigger, but no, because once I reloaded the fight, I realized the game had just bugged. The second time around, he spawned properly during that transition, and I was able to finish the fight. Hopefully that gets ironed out. That was a little annoying and confusing. I also had this issue of I was trying to wall run, but every time I contacted with the wall, my character instantly died. Seems like a bug because there was no hazard there, so that was another thing that I noticed. Now let's talk about replayability. I think that this is the game's biggest shortcoming. Simply put, there's just very little replayability here. Short of just playing the game again from start to finish, there is no longer term hook to keep you going once you complete the 5-hour campaign. You can't take your save with all of your upgrades and then replay like select missions that you really enjoyed, since there is no chapter and no level select. Instead, your option is to start over from the very first tutorial mission and play directly from beginning to end. The thing here is though, they've changed their design philosophy. They removed the larger play spaces and the more random nature of the game. In Shadow Warrior 2, they would mix and match these different room types and connect them in ways that would make the replayability more interesting because there would be some variety there. Instead, this game is one linear path that doesn't change. I'm halfway through my second playthrough. Everything is completely identical to the first time around, so there's nothing to keep it fresh. Far as I've been able to tell, every playthrough is going to be the same. The layout, the enemies that spawn, they aren't changing, and I've even played on multiple modes. I played on medium, and then I've done a second playthrough on hard. Things were the same as far as I can tell, unless I'm completely missing something. Now, you will keep your upgrades from the first playthrough, so that is something. Like, as you upgrade in your first playthrough, say you start on medium and then you go into hard, you're going to take those upgrades with you that you unlocked, but you have to, again, run from beginning to end that second time around. And as I was sitting down to write this review, I wanted to jump back into the game for like 30 to 60 minutes just to give myself a refresher. Normally, when working on reviews, I kind of like to go back and forth, playing and writing, but my only two options were A, to just replay that final mission, which is like this 5-minute boss battle, or B, start the game over from scratch. Yes, I keep my upgrades, but I had to go through the tutorial again, and you don't have your weapons until you unlock them, and you unlock them as you progress through the story. So I would have had to play for like 3 more hours before I had all of my weapons again, or just done the last boss fight. It's just like, I don't understand what they were thinking. This is all very confusing and seems like an obvious downgrade from what they had with the prior game, to the point where I don't understand how they thought this was preferable and that this is what they decided to do. So like I said with this game, it's a bit of a mixed bag. The most important part, the combat, I think is solid. It's really good. It's just there's so little game here, and it's designed in a way that there's almost no real replayability. You can play the game again, but you have to do it from start to finish. You can't do level select. There's no variety in the layout and the structure of the game. There's fundamentally no replayability. It's just really hard for that reason. As much as I like playing the game, and I think the gameplay's solid, it's going to be really hard for me to suggest. All right, and before we wrap up today's video, let's go ahead and take a closer look at some of the major features and benefits of today's sponsor and the LG Ultra Gear 34GP 950G. For starters, it's got VESA Display HDR 600 technology, which offers quite a broad luminance. In layman's terms, it basically just makes everything more vivid. While playing games, the dark areas are darker and the bright areas are brighter, and this can help make seeing things much more clear and easy in both those dark and light environments. The monitor also runs things just as well, both on full screen and windowed mode. When I'm making videos, I like to record in 16:9 since that is the default YouTube aspect ratio. And so I've been playing quite a few games in windowed mode while recording, and I've noticed that it's just as smooth as if I were to be full screen. The monitor's G-Sync support means minimal input lag or delay between the keyboard inputs and the on-screen action. And it also has some performance tracking with a built-in FPS counter letting you see in real time how your game is running. So those are some of the features supported with the LG Ultra Gear 34GP 950G. Like I said, I've been using this for a few months now at this point, and I've been pretty happy with its performance. If you are interested in learning more and checking it out for yourself, go ahead and use that link in the video description below. Okay, so to wrap this whole thing up here, let me just say this. Overall, I did have a good time. It was fun, it felt good, and I enjoyed the 5 hours that I spent with Shadow Warrior 3. But frankly, I am just shocked at the complete lack of any real, what we would consider replayability, or anything else to do rather than start the game over from scratch every time. You carry your upgrades, but you're playing no mission select, no variability in the levels. It's crazy. And I don't want to rail on this game either for just being short. I think it's fine for shorter experiences to exist. There are way too many 100+ hour games out there and not nearly enough time to play them after all. So a punchier game with a shorter length, cool, that's fine by me. I just think what's so off-putting here is knowing the changes that they made from 1 to 2, which helped, in my opinion, add way more value to the overall package and just provide much more game there. Knowing that is what makes what we have with Shadow Warrior 3 feel so disappointing. It's been 6 years since the last game, and it feels like we've gone backwards in some significant ways. While fairly niche, Shadow Warriors 1 and 2 are both well regarded. Critic reviews averaged at around 85 or so for each game, and the Steam user reviews are both sitting at very positive right now to this day. At this point though, after playing through Shadow Warrior 3, I'm really not sure where this third installment is going to fall, but I do feel like fans of the last 2 entries may very well be disappointed. I'm not saying no one will enjoy Shadow Warrior 3. I enjoyed it. The gameplay is solid. I had a good time. I just can't believe all the features that they removed or kind of backtracked on, and how short the game is, and its complete lack of replayability. It just feels like a $50 price tag for what is on offer right here, knowing the history and the lineage of this franchise. Feels like it's going to be too much for some people. If you like modern day arena shooters, there aren't a lot of varieties out. There's not a lot of options out there, and this is a good one of those. Just know it's a very short experience. You're getting about 5 hours for your $50, and there's no co-op. And there's no replayability. It's a really tough recommendation, but I'm never going to tell anyone what to do. It's your money. And yeah, I did have fun. So a little bit of a mess here. I'm not giving you a definitive anything. Hopefully you can use this information in this video to make up your mind about whether or not you should play Shadow Warrior 3. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. As always, appreciate you, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.